And we're live on YouTube now. Serge, we didn't get a chance to do a sound check. Can you hear me, and can we hear you?
I hear you fine, and I hope you can hear me as well.
Yeah, perfect. Let's start with you, just in case anything happens. Excellent. The YouTube is up for those of you listening on ZipDX audio server. Serge, you were at the WebRTC conference, apparently.
No, I wasn't, but I have someone with me that was.
Great.
This guy was.
Hi, I'm Jan Linden, and yes, I was there in San Francisco earlier in the week. Now I'm here with Serge in London for another WebRTC event. We have a hackathon, if you will, let's call it protothon. Yes, it was a tremendous success, the WebRTC Expo. We came in there, we had a pre-conference workshop that Google arranged, and we presented what we know about WebRTC, where it comes from, where it is, etc. And we had standing room only available participation. It was like 200 people in the room. Super excited, everyone. And then from there on, the conference continued that way. A lot of people, way beyond anybody's expectation, and a really good discussion going on.
That's excellent. Referring to the London thing, is that going on right now, this minute, or is it coming up?
Yes, we're right below us. There's a room with about 75 developers that are hacking across 13 teams on the WebRTC and WebAudio APIs, and we have both the Googler experts and outside developer expertise assisting the teams. And in about 30 minutes, they're going to start presenting the results of their work.
Okay.
It's all going to be documented on protothon.com.
Yeah, I have a little adjustment to make here. I asked somebody how the volume was. You know, Serge, we're bridging through to about 15 different servers here. So, okay, that's fantastic. I did hear that there were awards given, and there was apparently some really fantastic demos. Could you describe to us a little bit what you saw as for what was exciting? What was the most exciting stuff there?
I think the most exciting was the variety of the demos. That it was not only like, look, we can make a call in the web browser. It was people taking it much further. So it was anything from working gateways to PSTN and to Skype and Google Talk, etc. For anything from that to social applications with collaboration to things like Plantronics, showing how you can control things by sensors in your headset, and you can answer from your headset, etc. So exposing APIs that can talk directly to the browser from those devices. So it was the breadth of the early demos. I mean, we're pretty early in this game, and that was really exciting.
How many people attended and who were these people exactly? I know that Vaxeo was there. Jose did a demo. I know a lot of people from Vaxeo and people like that were there. But in general, who was there?
Yeah. So in general, there were, I think, the participants in the conference were more than 300. And then there were about 12, 13 demo companies, and there were Voxeo, there were Twilio, there were 10 Hands, as I mentioned, Plantronics, and then a number of those that had really interesting demos that I can't remember their name because it's the first time I hear the name.
Funny.
But go check out on WebRTCworld.com and you'll find the more information about it. But it was really exciting.
I'm typing in the WebRTC World, WebRTCworld.com in IRC. But okay, so that's who was there. That's several hundred people there. Just out of curiosity, now Plantronics, you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what were they up to there? I'd be interested in. It's interesting that they're following somebody like that would be there. Do you know what they did? They speak? Did they present, or were they?
Yeah, they were actually one of the sponsors. a diamond sponsor like us at Google were.
That's great.
And they also had a keynote where Joe Burton, their CTO, talked about exactly why is Plantronics here, because that was kind of the question from everyone. But obviously, this is huge for them. They're selling headsets and moving more into any kind of wearable devices, and this is how you use these things. Now, of course, you don't have to use with a headset, but it's nice. And being able to, he talked a lot about being able to control the experience without having to go to your computer and for example, log in when someone is calling and try to figure out where it's calling and press the right button. Doing that directly from your headset by clicking a button. That's a feature we used to from the mobile world, but we don't quite have in this yet. So it's a very important part of making it really ubiquitous and easy to use.
Yeah, and now that you mention it, that aspect, I mean, Plantronics, hey, they make headsets, and you need a headset for most of what we know of WebRTC. Looking at a net split here, it just boom, everybody left, and it's back in IRC. So that's I get that. We certainly, it's easy to understand why Voxeo Labs was there, or Voxeo. I mean, they're right in the thick of these things. Twilio, I know who they are, and we understand that. What other major sectors would have been involved in this? And also, are there like do independents go? I mean, it was in San Francisco, correct?
Yeah, in South San Francisco.
So I mean, it was open to anybody, also,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So there was a lot of people with general interest. When we had the workshop, I asked the audience how many were familiar with WebRTC from before, and that was probably half or so. So it was actually a lot of people that took the chance to get an introduction to WebRTC, and it was a mix of developers and business folks from all kinds of industries and sectors. And so I talked to companies like Oracle, Avaya, and Siemens in the enterprise space, and then we had the typical guys that have already been doing real-time communication in other forms, and then a lot of new developers that think that this is something that fits into a wider space of communication in general and web applications.
And this kind of attendance, by the way, the names you just mentioned, I mean, pretty much legitimizes WebRTC. Not that it needs it, but on the other hand, there's so many technologies out there. This is interesting. So obviously, these people feel, hey, we need to be in this space. We need to look and see what's happening and follow it and have our name mentioned in that context. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, definitely. It's moving along quickly from just being something that this can be interesting to something that's being implemented.
Yeah, coming out of the lab. Let me encourage people. I'm watching the IRC channel, and also we've got some nice people on the panel here. Oh, James just took his headset off. I was going to ask him if he had any questions. Bob, Andy, or Derek, do you have any questions while we're here? Because we don't want to hold these guys too long. Do you have any questions about, James, do you have any questions about WebRTC? And you've got your Lumia 820. Okay. Yeah. Anyone want to chime in?
It's interesting to see, well, people like Plantronics getting stuck in there now, yeah, which is very interesting. I went to the WebRTC conference in Paris a couple of months ago, and we had lots of big infrastructure manufacturers there coming up with words like danger and threat and things like that. We managed to duff them up a little bit. It's interesting how quickly the landscape is changing, and people are realizing that WebRTC is coming and it's going to be big.
Mm.
Have we actually got a mandated video codec yet?
That's a good question.
Well, yes, actually we do. We have two of the world's biggest browsers that use VPA. Next question.
Yeah, well, that's the Apple way of doing it, isn't it?
And apparently it's worked well for them.
It certainly has. Yeah, no, VP8 is the obvious way to go, but you know, again, the equipment manufacturers are going, oh no, you can't possibly do it without H264.
They get to sell more new equipment. It's perfect for them.
Yeah, in fact, rather interesting. One of their arguments was there's very little support for VP8 out there. So as soon as I got back, I did a quick trawl around the net to find out what devices now support VP8. And there's a whole raft of hardware-type devices and chipsets that support VP8 now. So it's
over 50 SoCs are expected to deliver multiple different kinds of hardware packages next year. So it's massive.
Yeah.
And is VP8 as efficient as H264 and some of its peers?
Well, it all depends on, H264 is a very broad term, right? It's 3 or 4 different codecs.
Yeah, right.
And so obviously our aim, so Google supplies hardware designs for free for VP8. And these hardware designs can be acquired by filling out a free license at webmproject.org, and these designs are extremely efficient. In fact, this design includes both an H264 and a VP8 implementation. Both are the
When you say hardware designs, you're talking about like an ASIC layout.
Yeah,
Is that right?
an RTL. Yeah.
I see. Mm-hmm.
And so we supply these for free. And over 50 semiconductor companies have taken a license and have committed to shipping hardware on them with this design. And the VP8 implementation in there is, of course, stellar, but also comes with one of the best H264 implementations. So it keeps.
And here's a question: if someone builds an application-specific integrated circuit, what percentage of the cost of the ASIC would represent the royalties that would need to be paid for a non-open coder?
I have no clue.
Well, that's a bit of an open question. It depends on...
I know I can go and dig out some licensing agreements from my previous career when I did have to license H264 in software, where the cost was pretty significant to us, but I don't know the cost in hardware.
Right.
And do we have a position statement from MPEG-LA on all of this?
Whoa.
Who?
Wait a minute. We need this.
I'm not aware. I'm just a software implementer guy. I don't take those.
Yeah, I understand. I just think it's this is as potentially revolutionary as it all is in telecom space. These other people are going to be impacted.
This is all disruptive, right? And the idea of having a royalty-free codec is very disruptive. The idea of having royalty-free audio stack and a royalty-free video stack for real time baked into the browser is disruptive, and this disruption is significant, and also the upside for everyone is very significant as well. I mean, what we want is for the RTC market to explode and for people to make hundreds of calls a day instead of dozens of calls a day, because it's going to be so easy, so pervasive, so much everywhere that we're going to see all kinds of different services launched. So yes, there's going to be different industries that will be that will find it a little bit disruptive at first, but I think for the most part, everyone can win for this. We talked about equipment suppliers that can supply, that can renew with the next generation equipment that supports the new codecs like Opus and VP8. We're talking about network providers that will see bandwidth usage increase on their networks. We're talking about laptop manufacturers that will see that will want to have the latest encoders on their machines, that will want to have the best webcams on their machines, and so on, and all the devices that go along with it. So I think that for the most part for the industry, this will be huge, a huge plus.
Yeah, I think this is fantastic. If you look at the mobile carrier industry, for example, and how they have been forced in many cases to realize that innovation comes in and they're going to have to do something to match it or lower prices. In this country, France, by the way, that's happened, and most people know what I'm talking about. But the point is, we benefit from these things, and true disruption doesn't mean like when in high school you disrupted the class and you got sent to the principal's office. It means that you've shaken things up to the point where new technologies make the status quo people, the establishment, if you will, turn around and go, okay, we need to know what this is. We need to get something that's as good, and we need to do it as cheaply or as effectively as the disruptors are doing. So I can't say enough good about this kind of work. I think this is fantastic.
Yeah. I'm not sure I like the word disruption because it implies
it's a negative.
It's
It is a negative word. I agree. It's innovation's a better way of putting it.
Yeah. We're growing new stuff.
Even better.
Yeah, it's true.
I have to say I do like the word because it represents what it is. It's really, really, really bad for the incumbent. So I think that the
not necessarily. It's not necessarily bad. It is bad if they're stuck in their ways. Yeah, it's all about change.
Certainly, if you're a buggy whip maker, Henry Ford was bad for you, but you didn't really see that at first. And in the end, we're all better off. And there are so many things that come from that. So I think it's uncomfortable for some, but it'll be very, very good for everybody.
Right. A more appropriate word would be something that that sort of connotes both positivity and negativity in one.
Yeah, evolutionary is a good word.
Anyone else on ZipDX have? Go ahead. Somebody was going to speak. Okay. Anybody else on ZipDX have any questions or IRC? I don't see anything being typed in because I think these folks may want to get back to what they were doing, which was, of course, partying and drinking heavily. But
right now, I'm drinking mostly this.
Oh, wrong direction for this time of day.
Yes. So.
It's been a long week.
At 9 p.m., we've got a pub booked for all the participants of the Prototom. So a true good London pub. So that'll be nice.
Serge, while we have you here, and I've got the wrong thing up here. While we have you here, is there anything else you would like to generally speak of as far as what your work involves? I know you can't talk about a lot of things, but anything exciting that you're doing that is not necessarily about the conference and all that?
Actually, I can talk about almost anything. This is the most open project I've ever worked on. We have the Opus codec coming into Chrome 24, which will be going into beta channel pretty soon. So that's significant. It means that Chrome and Google have committed to the Opus codec as part of the WebRTC stack. WebRTC on 24 also supports Turn, which will help get those last percentage of people that can't connect peer-to-peer properly and have to go through a proxy server. And so that's all wired up and working good. And in M25, so version 25 that is in Canary currently, the Canary channel, we are starting to work on data channels. And data channels is quite disruptive, for the use of that word again, because it means that for the first time, browsers can send data peer-to-peer without having to go to a server. And this is going to be a great great API because it'll mean for gaming applications and so on, you'll be able to send data very, very quickly and in sync with the audio and the video. So again, I expect to see a lot of innovation there. And the data channel API can be used without audio and video, just as a transport mechanism between the browsers. And the fact that it's authenticated, encrypted, makes it extremely safe and private. So I really look forward to seeing what developers will be able to do with it.
So to do that, you'll have to use Chrome or something, or will it be able to be used by regular Internet Explorer?
Well, Firefox is actually the driver on data channel API. So of course we want Chrome and Firefox to work together. Yesterday on stage, we showed for the first time an audio and video call working for the very first time. Between both browsers, and obviously we want data channel to work there as well. So for browsers implementing WebRTC that we know of today, we're both working very hard on interop.
Okay, I've got a question, Serge. What's going on with embedded WebRTC on mobile devices that you know of?
Well, we decide to iterate on the desktop, right? And so the API, as you know, for WebRTC has gone through massive changes over the year. Since we released the first implementation in January, we've had to change the API significantly 3 times. And for us to be able to move at that speed, we decide to use a desktop. Now that the API is almost at a stable V1, we can start focusing some of the resources that we were putting on iterating the API and bringing it up to date. We can start focusing some of those resources on mobile. So stay tuned. We're starting to work on it, and we're taking it very seriously.
Yeah, are you allowed to say what the first likely platforms are going to be?
I don't know. The first one that gets ready. We're iterating on both iOS and Android simultaneously.
Okay.
Obviously, on iOS, browsers are obligated to use Safari. So a browser such as Chrome on iOS is just the UI, and it uses the same rendering engine as Safari. We cannot use a Chrome rendering engine. We cannot use all the things that make Chrome super fast on iOS. So there is a challenge. So we'll probably have to shift our attention on making packages that work well for native applications on Safari. But for Android, Chrome on Android is a great browser, and we hope to be able to support WebRTC in there soon.
Well, that's the answer. Chrome on Android. What a surprise.
Well, and you know, if Firefox on Android, I'm sure we'll be able to support it as well.
About IE10.
Well, I hear they're working on WebRTC and they're very serious about it. So it's just that we haven't seen any running code yet. Let's see. Let's reserve judgment for when they publish something.
I would assume that they're going to have to keep up, to be honest. Anybody else have any questions on any of these topics? We have a whole panel.
Not a question, but a comment.
Sure.
It was what, 6 months ago, I guess, or maybe not quite that long, that Tim tried to make a couple of calls. He had me install Canary and we were trying to do video calling back and forth, and it worked a little bit, and then it didn't work, but it showed promise. Yesterday, I signed up for a Twellophone account, and in seconds was all of a sudden Chrome was talking to another instance of Chrome, and it was completely appless. In fact, it didn't even involve multiple pages or JavaScript or anything like that. It was absolutely brilliant, and is a wonderful example of where this is going to go. And it's just completely going to abandon what we think of as telephony. It's just going to be everybody connected to everybody by whatever is the appropriate means.
You know what? I don't totally agree with you there. It's not going to take over overnight. It's just going to be another mode, which is going to be used in a whole raft of different scenarios. It's not going to take over.
Right, but
I don't care if it takes over or not. I'm just happy to hear that it's working fine for you. So that's. But so
where?
Thanks for the words. I will relay these words to the team. Great to hear that that people are starting to use it and that they love the experience.
Yeah, and we're going to do a little test using Twellophone, just because a few of us within where I work are Twitter users. We're going to put it up on some big monitors and see if what does it do in the way of giving a sort of ad hoc bid-conf capability between disparate sides of the Atlantic, which is very cool for something that involves effectively no dollars. I do. You're right, James. It's not going to sort of eviscerate anything or anyone.
Yeah, there are sort of
going to bring it into different contexts.
Yeah, there's scenarios like how it's not particularly practical to ring a WebRTC client. I mean, I know you can get around it in a number of ways, but it's just not what it's really meant for.
At the moment, yeah. The way the telephone app works, and that's Chris Matthews' project effort there. The way it works, it's got a little Chrome plugin that if you want to have incoming as opposed to just outgoing, you install this little plugin, and then it runs in the background and gives you this ability to track other telephone users who are online, offline, and it behaves a lot like Skype does when Skype is running. So that's kind of cool.
Instead of running a plugin, what they could be doing is using HTML5 notifications to monitor for calls. And so I think people still need to learn about the web a lot and how the web works. For the easy solution many times is, oh, we'll just, you create a plugin or create an extension, or while the web does have very powerful frameworks for things like this. And so I hope that as we go, the knowledge will spread about what services the web can offer for things like call notifications and chat notifications and all this stuff.
And also it gets integrated into all the web, the things you do in the web, where you don't necessarily have, it's not necessarily that the phone is ringing, it's you are doing something and suddenly that...
Yeah, suddenly you're talking and videoing.
Right.
But you know what? There's a bigger problem, and James, you're a great poster person for this problem, which is reaching somebody. You've got 50,000 different channels, and we all do. I do too. I've got SIP URIs. I've got I'm on Google Talk. I'm on the chat, and during the day, the fact is, getting down to it, trying to reach somebody, you never know which. There needs to be one thing that's going to ring everything, but that would be pandemonium for the person who's being rung.
Well, you don't have to ring everything. You just have to choose the one that's most appropriate at that time.
Yeah, but you don't want me to do that. If I want to talk to you, what do I do? Let's go through this a second. Because when you and I were at Astracon, for example, you were impossible to reach. Of course, granted,
I was not
3G
impossible.
Was not working well, and Wi-Fi wasn't working well, but not impossible. But some of the numbers that you gave out were not working, and
not working. My number's not working.
No, to be fair, this is identical for me. I mean, I would give people numbers, and they would call them, and they'd get the message service, or, the voicemail or whatever. The point, though, is, and tying this into the WebRTC discussion, there's this horrible problem of how do you reach anybody, and it's called, the namespace, right? Really.
Yeah, there's a really big gap in the market for somebody to run a service which federates all your different types of communication.
Oh, you mean Google Plus?
And while you guys solve the world's problems, we are going to have to run off.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for joining us. Take care.
Please don't hesitate to pull us in again if we can bring anything to the discussion. All right.
Okay. Thanks. Have a good time. And have a drink on.
It'd be really interesting to have them back to see what the results of their hackathon is for next week.
I'll make sure if you follow me on Google Plus or you follow Plus WebRTC, I'm going to post all the videos there, all the pictures, and so you'll be able to see all the stuff that's been created today.
Brilliant.
Perfect. Hey, thanks so much, guys, for joining us. Take care. Okay, and with that, we're at the 30-minute mark, so we're cool. That was great. I'm really glad.
That was really good, yeah.
That they took the time to do that.
Nice moustache as well.
Nice what?
Moustache.
Moustache. I thought you said massage. What are you talking about?
Moustache. I'm tempted, but I keep my fingers off the buttons.
A couple of things I'd like to mention here. One is the mega conference that I've been posting in IRC, but if people are listening to this and if it's not yet December 4th, megaconference.org. Go register, get on. It's a video conference. We're going to be all over the world. You'll see some of the VUC regulars. I'll try to make it sometime. I don't know when. But it happens from, I think it's midnight December 4th to midnight December 5th. Go look at, and by the way, Derek is looking down, but I hope you're making a note because we're going to be talking about BRIA in a second. If you're in the BRIA 3.5 beta, first of all, you can use it to get on this mega conference. So go to megaconference.org and register. Thank you. And you'll talk to some of the regulars, but also there is a private hangout coming up for the beta. And I know a lot of you people are in the beta. I am, Derek is, James is, Bob is, Andy is, I think, right? Or he's on another planet. He's not listening. Okay. Yeah. No, you're in this, aren't you, Andy? You're in the beta, right? Beta?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
So,
indeed. Just one thing about MegaCon. Today is the last day to register.
Well, hurry up then, everybody. But I think if you keep registering, they were complaining that not too many people did register, and I probably messed up the announcement last week. Register now, Mega Conference, don't make me spell conference, please, .org. And we will get together with our Bria 3.5 betas, with our VVX 1500s, and so on, and everybody will get together.
Oh, so it requires a video.
It does require video, John, yeah.
All right.
Well, requires, I don't know, requires, but you need to probably appear to be able to transmit video. I don't know. Take a look. I mean, obviously, you can't take a look, but, whatever your reader does.
I don't have a webcam that... unless I use something on the Mac, which is...
I'm not sure it matters. John, I honestly, I think it's best effort video, but I'm not 100% sure that they throw you out if you can't do video. It would be interesting to find out. I don't know.
I'll go and see what it says. Okay. Just for shits and giggles, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so Derek, tell us a little bit about... I'm putting him on the spot here. The 3.5 beta, go to the forum and look for that announcement, I guess, Derek's announcement. But you're gonna have access to the developers. Derek, I'll give you the microphone, as it were.
Thank you. Yeah, what we have planned, I discussed this with Randy a few days ago, was a live session where anybody that's testing the beta can have direct access to what is the head programmer for Counterpath. So if you have specific questions, comments, suggestions, and things like that, that's the time to do it. And that would be next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Vancouver time, which I guess is 6 p.m. your time, Randy, right?
Yeah, and 12 noon Eastern, and 5 p.m. UK. So I'm trying to type this in at the same time, the beta 3.5.
And if you do plan on showing, it would be nice to just post that on the forum, on the appropriate post, that I know how many people are going to be there, so I can let the engineering know. And also, you're going to have to invite, well, I guess the URL is there, right, or is it? Yeah, I posted the URL. It's a permanent hangout, but we'll use it specifically for this event. So that'll be interesting, and I think this is one of the great uses of Hangouts, and it's also one of the great uses of the VUC, if I may say. Feedback through the community. Yeah, I'd like to add that engineering is really enthusiastic about this. They also agree it's a great way to get immediate feedback and hear what end users are thinking. Admittedly, we're not like all end users, but we represent a specific opinion. Well, hopefully, and I think this is your hope as well as ours, the nice thing about the people in the community is that we know how to express what is not working. So just like people type in the forum, it's a lot less trouble to jump on the Hangout and say, okay, here's what's happening. You could even share your screen for that matter, which is interesting, and go through the whole process and say, okay, the codecs. I had a little problem with codecs, which disappeared mysteriously, so I don't know what that was about. But point is, you have to go in and type all your configuration stuff and everything. Yeah.
That's a non-problem, Randy. I can replicate that.
Yeah, nobody could. Nobody could. But for some reason, it just cleared itself up. So for whatever reason that was, could have been, there's mysterious things like cache when I've had Counterpath programs on my computers for years. So who knows what's stuck in the outer reaches of the hard drive someplace, I mean, it could be anything. I don't think that stuff goes away necessarily when you install a beta, so it's hard to say. Anyway,
long story short, this is a fantastic opportunity. So if you're interested in that and you're in the beta, please join us. Now, how is that going, by the way, Derek?
It's going real well. I'm really pleased with the last beta that was, what was that, put out about 4 or 5 days ago. It seems to be working real well for me.
Number 3, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the problem, Derek. There are not enough bugs to spot.
I know.
It's too good. You have to put some extra bugs in for us.
If it's any consolation, if you'd have seen the beta about a week and a half before we released it, you wouldn't be saying that.
Okay, with that, we're in pretty much an open session. We were really lucky to get Serge, and I'm afraid I don't recall the name of the other gentleman that was with him, but really happy to have them. We're always happy to have Derek and our regulars, but we don't actually have a topic today. I've got a couple ideas, and we were talking to Carl before. Carl, are you still with us, by the way?
I'm still here.
Okay, so we had a pre-discussion, and we were talking about having a post-discussion. Let me just look at my notes and make sure that I didn't forget anything, because at my age, these things kind of slip away. No, it looks like we covered all the bases. There's been more news coming out about backdoors in Skype and in the Microsoft. I guess it is Skype actually, or is it? I guess I have to find the article. But anybody have any comments on that? You recall we talked about this briefly last week.
Yeah, that's just a whole load of scaremongering. It is.
Well, is it or is it true?
No, it's not true. It's actually incredibly difficult to intercept media.
Well, it wouldn't be if you were backdooring it, though. In other words, if there really is a backdoor into these programs.
But nobody's found one. I read the article, and there was nothing particularly concrete in there.
And the article said services like Skype, at least one of the articles that I read, which didn't actually say Skype or talk about any sort of interception of the packets.
Yeah, we know that it is possible to do things with Skype, but you have to be able to implement a supernode really close in network terms to the target in order to redirect and spoof traffic. It's tricky. It's very, very difficult, and you've got to know exactly where your target is in network terms and get really close to it.
Let me throw this out to you guys. Forgetting that topic just for a second, if you can go to TSM says doubtful there's a backdoor, more likely a way they set a flag and would route it to an intermediate server. They'd have to really want that, of course, but yeah, I agree.
And they don't want it, because one of their big selling points is that you can't do that, and they don't do lawful interception.
Well, supposedly. But anyway, if you go to vuc.me/today, there's a whole bunch of stories there, including, I'll read them off real quick, voice verification for smartphones, we could talk about briefly, RIM preps for BlackBerry 10 QWERTY, which you're talking about a lot, James. Maybe you don't know about that particular thing. There's also an article about voice calls over 4G LTE, which are battery killers.
Which they
are, as we all know. And the proposed FBI surveillance law would target VoIP Club and TruePhone VoIP.
What?
Yes. Hold on, my wife is here. I'm going to have to
introduce us.
Yes, come in, my dear. Say hello. Okay, she doesn't want to do that. Let's get to the TruePhone thing. So, James, go to vuc.me/today.
You've got me worried now.
Or I'll be right out, my dear. Let me give you the exact. Here's the Technorati link. So they say TruePhone VoIP, and I will be back in 1 second, and I expect you guys to immediately start talking. Go. Oops, somebody got a call. James, can you look at? Are you looking?
I'm looking at it now.
Take it away.
They're after you, James.
I've got to read it first.
It's going to give something.
You can't just drop things like this just to shock me.
He just did.
It looks like just another article written randomly by someone with.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many of these.
Proposed FBI surveillance law. But you know what? We support lawful interception anyway, both in UK and in US. We have no problems with lawful interception.
As
we
all
do it.
proper VoIP providers should.
Well, some do, some don't. It really depends on your architecture, and we built ours so that you can. And if you're proxying the media, you can do all kinds of things with the media. If you see what I mean, it's really useful. But that was a deliberate decision to do that, and other people have done it different ways. So anyway, has anybody, changing the subject very rapidly away from anything that might have anything to do with us, has anybody been following the hook flash peer-to-peer thing that was announced in the background at WebRTC? Anybody see that? Interested? Anybody interested?
Yes.
Yeah, it's Eric's new baby. I mean, he tried to launch Hook Flash, which is this peer-to-peer thing, about a year and a bit ago, but it really didn't get any traction. So what he's done now is produced all the tools, the SDK and bits and pieces, to allow people like Gamers Bob to implement peer-to-peer VoIP using Hook Flash, all the Hook Flash bits and pieces. So there's one to check. Bung that in your Google search engine.
Which Eric was that?
Eric Largaway.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah, Derek says with a big smile on his face. Yeah, a gentleman that you might just know.
Yeah, I think we've met.
Once or twice, yeah, indeed. Anyway, another hot topic is voice and video for BBM. Anybody else apart from me got a voice and video capable BlackBerry with BBM? Am I the only one? I talk to myself all the time, clearly. Anyway, it's good news. Rather, I did a little bit of digging, and you would be amazed at what codecs this uses. And it's not what you would expect at all. But it's got a range of wideband high-definition codecs in there. Again, very strange ones, things that you would not expect. And the video is H.264, for those people who like H.264. I spent a little bit of time trying to get into the BlackBerry wall garden from outside, and got a reject, which is very promising, actually. So there's a chance. Well, perhaps I wouldn't want to be talking about that, really, should I? But potentially every single BlackBerry could have a SIP voice and video endpoint kind of embedded in it in a kind of power-friendly way. That could be a bit interesting, couldn't it? Anyway, that was enough to say. CC had to pop out that. Oh no, I'm not listening to this. I'm off. And he was gone. Has anybody else got anything to upset everybody else?
You should read the last paragraph of that little. You could even read it out.
Well, I haven't got.
Well, the last but one paragraph, actually, not the one-line ender.
Are you going to read it? Because you're probably in there.
Oh, okay then. All right. TruePhone would also be heavily impacted by this proposed law. TruePhone's mobile VoIP service allows users to make cheap local and international calls from their mobile phones. TruePhone targets iPhone users, BlackBerry users, and users of other high-end smartphones like Samsung. TruePhone is notable because it was one of the first providers to offer VoIP for the phone. TruePhone VoIP also brings VoIP service to BlackBerry users, who have been largely avoided by other VoIP providers. So they're after you, definitely.
Yeah, but we do support lawful interception already, where we always have done, and emergency calling. So who wrote this? David Guhoost. Do you think he's a ghost author, ghostwriter?
Oh,
I think we'll have to have a chat with him.
Maybe just a writer with a deadline.
Yeah, it's reasonably random, isn't it? Well, I suppose it's heartening that he's actually heard of TruePhone. That's
well, it seems rather strange that he particularly picked you out.
Yeah, it's bizarre, isn't it? Why us? Have a go at Skype, because they don't do lawful interception or emergency calling, 911 stuff. Have a go.
Do you reckon he thinks it's safe because you're not Apple and you're not Microsoft?
Yeah, but we have been known to have a go. What the heck is that?
Looks like a bottle opener.
What is Randy doing? Oh no, he's teasing us again. I can't compete with that. All I can do is wave my little angel around. My 3D printed angel, which somebody printed for me today. It's nowhere good as
What material was it printed in?
It's kind of plastic.
You're holding it on the wrong finger, James.
Am I? Well, listen to this. I'll give you a clue. That's what it sounds like if I hit it. So it's kind of like very hard, plasticky nylon stuff. Oh, Randy. Glup, 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 glup. For those of you on the conference bridge, Randy is now teasing everybody with...
Randy is now ordering a new keyboard.
Yeah, Randy has now spilled red wine all over his keyboard.
A very expensive mistake.
I've actually done that before.
Yeah, I have as well.
And had to replace the keyboard. All right,
And
the light has gone out, so I'm good for another few minutes.
Time check.
Did we cover any of these? So what about the proposed FBI surveillance law with Target, VoIP Club, and TruePhone? You guys analyzed that and dismissed it?
It's reasonably random because he's kind of singled out TruePhone as a likely target. And rather bizarrely, we're just about one of the very few VoIP providers who actually do support lawful interception and emergency calling. So the impact to us is about zip, really. So why did you pick up?
Okay, so you've handled that one. The voice calls over 4G LTE networks are battery killers from GigaOhm. Well, is this news even?
No, it's not. We've known that forever.
It's silly, really.
But you know what? I have to say that may or may not be true. I think he might be talking about first-gen LTE modulators.
Well, is there anything but first gen right now?
No,
is there a second gen?
Apple has a an all-in-one LTE chip in it. As far as I understand it, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, the current, everything prior to the Apple iPhone 5 and some of the very, very newest LTE devices, as far as I understand it, required 2 or 3 separate chips in order to modulate for LTE. And then the iPhone 5, one of the things that was revolutionary about it, or evolutionary about it is probably more appropriate, is that it contained a sort of a system-on-chip LTE radio. And so that decreases the power consumption dramatically and puts it more closely on par with something like HSPA Plus or one of these other. I'm sure that HSPA Plus is still more power efficient because it's a much older technology, but that's the idea, is that they didn't have any SoC LTE modulators, so it's incredibly power inefficient. The reason that Apple chose to put LTE in the iPad 3 was that the iPad 3 has a huge battery in order to run that great big screen. What's that?
No, James, you've got to do something about that. Seriously, he keeps
on muting me.
Yeah, because you're making noise. You have.
No. I'm huffing and puffing because I keep on butting in, and I can't butt in because somebody's muted me.
Don't butt in.
So the iPhone 5.
Okay,
just for the record, the iPhone 5 supports the LTE, whatever it is, modulation scheme. It also supports HSDPA Plus and the rather interesting dual channel HSDPA Plus.
Right. The 42 megabit download HSPA.
Yeah, is it 42 or just go a little bit? Yeah.
42. Single bare channel is 21, and multi-channel is 42. That's what the that's what the Nexus 4 has.
But
what's interesting about that? Go ahead.
I would ask the question: how fast do you really want to go on your mobile device? I mean, the most bandwidth-heavy application I can think of that most people would want to play with is streaming. What are you doing, Randy? Streaming high-definition video, and that will take nowhere near.
So I think the answer is that people don't need that much line speed today. But what they do want is they want cheap connectivity. So the more spectral efficiency, obviously, the lower the cost. So what's revolutionary about LTE? Everybody misunderstands that what's interesting about LTE is not the speed, exactly to your point, but it is to the modulation scheme being more efficient, and therefore allowing carriers to roll it out for a lot lower cost without having to sort of subdivide every quote unquote cell into separate towers and power supplies and data runs and or relay stations, et cetera, et cetera. So when Apple was about to release the iPad 3, there was a very interesting article that said basically how it was entitled, quote, "How Apple Could Screw AT&T," close quote, which was basically by not using LTE, because suddenly if you roll out the iPad 3, you're going to have even more people scrambling around trying to use this HSPA bandwidth, and therefore requiring AT&T to invest a bunch of money in further subdividing all their HSPA cells, and doing so at great expense, in order to have the users not think that quote unquote AT&T sucks.
Can we go around the table? Can we go around the table quickly, and I'll call on you, Carl, first because you were speaking. What exactly is the argument for LTE on your phone? Why do you need LTE?
You don't. You don't.
Why would you want
LTE?
Does. Why do you want LTE?
Well,
why do you?
Yeah, so it's a little faster, and that's So it's a little faster. And personally, I don't. Not yet. I personally don't. It's as I see it right now, it's a liability, which is part of the reason that I bought a Nexus 4. So right now there's more HSPA coverage than there is LTE coverage, and 42 megabits is plenty for anybody as far as I'm concerned, and basically it uses lower power, and so right now I don't think there is any benefit to the end user of LTE. Now if you're a Verizon subscriber and you want to stay a Verizon subscriber, then LTE is great because it gives you better throughput if you want to do high bandwidth things like tethering and so on. But ultimately I don't, and most people shouldn't care, again, unless you're with Verizon, because it does have it is a liability as far as power and so on, maybe even telephone size, but more importantly, the reason it does matter is to the carriers, so that they can reduce the cost of goods sold, so that they can provide you, so that this race to the bottom. I mean, think about how much cheaper cellular coverage is today than it was even 5 years ago or 3 years ago. And it's unbelievable, and so that incredible race to the bottom is to the benefit of everyone. I mean, right now I use an AT&T MVNO called Straight Talk. I'm extremely happy with it. I pay $45 a month for unlimited everything. I mean, that's inconceivable. That's just so cheap. For multi-channel HSPA plus unlimited everything, and that's just insane.
How much do you pay? How much do you pay for that?
$45 US.
I'm paying 20.
Yeah, and what's the coverage like?
Unlimited everything?
Yeah.
What's the coverage like?
No, not unlimited everything, but unlimited everything except data, which goes up to like 3Gs. And I can tell you that I use, but I mean, I'm one person. I use like 300 megs, 500 megs maybe. Our limit is 3 gigs before they start surcharging us, so that's good. Carl, let me just move on to James, for example, who wants to be in the tubes sending us, so he wants LTE because, and they do have a good system in the UK, by the way, and he wants it.
Yeah, I want good coverage is probably the thing that I want most, and I consider getting a 4G service from Everything Everywhere, but the coverage is absolutely diabolical, and the pricing's all screwed up. So
I thought, what is it, EE or Triple E? Who is it in the UK that's doing it?
It's EE.
Are you not with them, I take it?
No, I'm with good old, can you read that? 3, which they've just upgraded their network, so it's all HSDPA plus with little bits of dual channel HSDPA, which goes faster than I want it to go in most cases. And then when you drop off the end of their network, you roam onto everything everywhere's 2G network. So yeah, it's okay. And
I think Carl's argument, the good argument actually, Carl, that I hadn't thought much about was tethering, of course. So yeah, you want 3G because 4G because LTE, let's say, because if, for example, I have tethering is in our contract, and it's very cheap. As I said, it's about $25 a month, actually, in dollars. But it's true that it's not fast, and if we had LTE, tethering would be much more viable, might be much more pleasant.
Yeah, and you want tethering to be easy and packaged in such a way that it doesn't zap your battery. And
that's a problem.
These things.
It's especially if you need a space heater, you can use the telephone that you're tethering with at the same time.
But this said, and I want to ask Derek and Bob also. But before you go on, I did have a tethering experience, and I posted this, and maybe it's been said already, but I'll say it again real quick, which is that I was on tour with the guys with the canned heat, and they all are from another country and had no access. So they tethered on my contract, and it was 3G that's, not the greatest speeds, but I mean, they were thrilled to have any access at all. Okay, James. Derek, what are your feelings about the LTE? Do we need LTE? Are you going to be watching the latest Madonna clips on it, or tethering?
I don't think so. Being a Sprint customer, I went with a phone with WiMAX. Mm-hmm. After that, I went to the Nexus with LTE. That's been 3 years now. I've yet to see anywhere that I've gone with coverage.
Wow.
And I've been paying extra for that.
That's because you're on Sprint.
That is because we're on Sprint. But that brings us back to is 3G adequate? And for me, it largely is. The only issue I have, as most Android users have, is with battery life. And I use one of these things now. Are you familiar with those?
What is it?
A rechargeable charger? I can't see it.
Yeah, we can't. I can't see it either, to tell you the truth. What is it?
It's a battery charging battery.
Okay.
Yep. iGo made the first commercially successful one, but there are a bajillion of them now. Some of them that have huge batteries that are like 3,000 milliamp hours.
For me, that becomes
incredible. If you have. Go ahead.
I was going to say, for me, that becomes a bit pointless because it's something that I want to carry with me and not carry around in a suitcase.
Yeah,
that's true.
You mean it charges you have to plug your phone into it and it charges, or basically?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what's cool about it is, let's say you're traveling for business and you get to your hotel room, and what you can do is you can take your iPad and your phone and the device, you plug it into the outlet, you plug both devices in, and when you wake up the next morning, they're both charged and the device is charged.
Let me ask John Covici, are you out and about with LTE, or do you even have LTE, and do you care about it?
Oh yes, I have it. I have it, and I haven't used it that much because I'm mostly here, and it's in the Wi-Fi does it. But I did use it a little bit, and it's actually quite useful. And I at times I need to tether, and when I do that, I want to download some fairly large files, and so that's going to be quite handy. The only thing about Verizon that is a problem is, and I guess LTE didn't solve it, is you can't do voice and data at the same time.
Right.
But other than that, it's fine.
And my wife.
That's so weird. I don't understand that at all.
Well, that's just the way.
I don't get that.
Just the way they're
something in their modulation scheme that.
Yeah.
I honestly, I think it's policy because.
No, it's a CDMA thing.
You think it's policy? I think it's
I think it's a technical thing.
I think it's CDMA, as John says. Just a brief thing. I'm going to call on you, Bob, so prepare your thoughts. Get your thoughts ready. But I was going to say my wife and I depend very much on being able to communicate when she's on the road, because now she's on the road, not me. It's funny. But at the same time, you know, I mean, for us, even Edge is sufficient. I'd rather have 3G for some things, but we don't do FaceTime or any of that. You know, I mean, we don't need any of that stuff. Bob, I'm going to call on you, Bob Bowles. What is your feeling about LTE? You actually took us on a trip. Was that LTE we were looking at?
Well, so the interesting thing is I have Verizon, and at 30 miles outside of Boston, it will drop off of LTE and go back to 3G. So the road trip I did on the Hangout last weekend was all 3G because I'm 60 miles outside of Boston and don't have LTE. So I'm going to echo, I think, some other sentiments here, like Derek, and say that 3G, reliable 3G is plenty for most everything I do. As a novelty, I will tether to LTE when I'm in Boston and get ridiculously fast speeds as long as I'm not moving around. But once I get on the train, I've often flipped my LTE radio to 3G mode only, so it stays reliable.
You know, it's funny because I'm on the other generation, so I will often set, in fact, I think I've got my wife's phone set, because she doesn't know about these things. I think I've got her set to Edge, just to save the battery, because she doesn't care. She gets a few emails and messes around with that, and I'm pretty much, you know, real basic G+ emails, so I don't need it.
See, you couldn't do that on the iPhone because then you wouldn't have Siri. You wouldn't even be able to use basic Siri.
I don't use Siri. I have an iPhone, but it doesn't have Siri. I'm on an iPhone.
Do you know
4.
anybody who uses Siri?
No, I don't.
I don't.
I do.
But John,
I only use it for. I use it for something really simple. I mean, I don't try to search, you know, the great movies, but it does pretty well if I want to say call somebody or something like that, you know,
right.
Something really simple. So I use it, or else I will use it to dictate the title of a calendar, you know, entry or something really simple stuff. I mean, and then, you know, for that, it's very nice. It seems to work, you know, unlike when it was first came out, it seems to now be working, you know, a lot better. So for that, it's very handy. I think people go nuts with it, and I don't believe in that, you know. But for the simple stuff that I use it for, it works great. I don't even like it for calendar apps because it doesn't do it the way I like it to do it. So
I think most people
John,
have gotten over it, John.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Carl, go ahead. I was just going to say, I think most people have gotten it. The Siri was the novelty. Google has a really, really good voice to text. Yeah, no,
Google Now.
Just the whole Google thing. I mean, you can do the
yeah.
search, you can do any of that stuff, and it actually works very well. In fact,
including I've heard good things.
Yeah, including you can write. I mean, it does all the dictation stuff. It does
but the
just
thing
as
about
good.
it is,
go ahead.
Is the problem with that is that it doesn't integrate very well with the phone.
No,
because Apple won't let it.
No, not with that phone.
Oh, if you're on iPhone, yeah, that's right.
Which is why I'm going to be buying a Nexus.
Incredible.
Carl is going to be buying me a Nexus 4 soon. We can't get them over here yet. I'm ready to pull the trigger, but they're not available. Let's get over to Andy because we're waiting on that. Andy, do you even have LTE available where you are, and do you care?
Well, as far as I know, just about the only place in the country that has LTE is just about around. Actually, it might be some in Manchester, but around where James is. So no, it doesn't affect me at all. Do
you want it? Do you have the desire to have LTE?
I use 3G and other such things so infrequently. I'm nearly always on Wi-Fi, so it means little to me really. I certainly wouldn't pay a huge amount extra for it. That's for sure.
Who's on ZipDX who can comment on this? Maybe Michael or anybody else as far as LTE and do we care? Anybody? I'm looking also at the IRC. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I use Bria over 3G, and here sometimes it doesn't work very well. So I don't have LTE. I mean, Swisscom just I think they just rolled it out like 2 days ago or something. So my phone doesn't support it. I don't have a plan yet. But
your phone? What phone doesn't support it? What phone doesn't support it, Max?
I got the Samsung Galaxy S2.
Okay.
So I don't think it supports it, right? But I do use I use Bria voice over IP, right? on the Android, and you know, I expect that with, especially with the video on the LTE, I just expect that to work a lot better than it does with 3G.
Yeah, on my phone I have something that, I don't know if it's faux 4G or like what it is, because it's a Samsung Fascinate 4G, which I think in the US is the Vibrant or something like that. And it works great at the cottage. I mean, that's where the bandwidth thing is good for me. I set it to tether, set it as Wi-Fi up on the counter, and my laptop and everything else just works, because my tablet's Wi-Fi as well. So wife brings it up and we just share the connection, and I can work from there all weekend because the connection's quite good. My upload speed is actually better on the over the cell phone than it is when I'm actually at home. And that's just because it's Rogers, and Rogers sucks.
And ILNet guy says, I don't tether very often, but 3G speeds are not great. It's true. I mean, to me, what I have, my plan, 3G speeds are like Edge, really. So LTE in that regard is appealing. I don't need it often. Yeah, I mean, I would like to have a better speed, but at the same time, I'm not going to pay a premium for it. So I don't know.
No, I mean, for me, it's just all part of the phone.
Right.
For like basically, like for battery usage and on the phone itself. Like, I mean, 3G is fine. It's when you start getting into tethering and you're trying to use devices that have like full-out screens, and you know you're trying to actually utilize them as if you were at home. That's when I think having the option of flipping up to a higher capacity connection makes a lot of sense. But it doesn't need to be the default. I mean, I think having multiple tiers. Well, like you even said it, you know, your wife sets it, you set it to Edge for her, just because she gets small amounts of data, and at the slower speeds, it's less, you know, less battery usage. So
yeah, I mean,
when I'm tethering, I mean, my phone's plugged into the wall, like it's not sitting out there on battery.
Yeah, well, there's that, of course, but if it's plugged into the wall, it could be plugged into Wi-Fi, pretty much.
Right.
Well, but that's the problem, is when I'm at the cottage, for example, I'm tethering, right? So it's producing a Wi-Fi signal for me.
Right.
There is no internet at the cottage, so I have to bring it with me.
Okay. Yeah, you know, I was in the... It's kind of funny because we were in a train and the outlet... We couldn't figure out why the outlet wasn't charging the iPhone, and then I finally figured out after about 3 hours on the train, 2.5 hours on the train, that the outlet wasn't working. But the point is, when you have power on a train, it's true. If you've got power on a train, it would be fantastic to have LTE. Now, I don't know what my provider, the $25 a month unlimited 3 gigs a month data account, I don't know if they'll ever get 3D LTE, or whether, you know, there'll be much going with it. But right now, 3G is it's pretty much sufficient. I was going to say significant, sufficient for us. So yeah.
Here's a data point from the field. Just 2 weeks ago, I was on the Amtrak going from Chicago to St. Louis, and I had my Galaxy Nexus, my HSPA Galaxy Nexus. That's a single band HSPA plus device, so 22 megabits tops. And so I'm on this train going to St. Louis, and I am on a conference call hosted on my phone while I am tethering to my laptop, while I am remote desktoping to 2 computers in our LAN. And this is over HSPA, and you know what? It worked swimmingly. I mean, really, my only complaints was when we were going through, you know, some little stretch of BFE where there was edge coverage. But for the most part, I had HSPA the entire way, and so the simultaneous voice and data was fantastic because I'm on this call while I'm doing all of my data work, and you know, it was pretty incredible. One thing that we're doing in particular, which was kind of interesting, which was my wife's laptop was on the kitchen table back at home, and while I was doing remote desktop to these 2 other machines, I had mounted, you know, basically I was transferring files from her Wi-Fi connected laptop on the kitchen table via the Wi-Fi in the house to the VPN at the office, slingshotting through the VPN tunnel to my laptop, so that I could migrate some files on the laptop across from me in the compartment where we were sitting, because we were migrating her from her old laptop to a new laptop. So like 10-way multitasking over HSPA plus. I mean, I cannot think of anything more data demanding than what we were doing right at that moment, and it was completely adequate.
Any other comments about LTE before we should probably?
I'm back.
Oh, great! Perfect time.
I have done that. I have done that tethering thing, the simultaneous voice and data, and I see iPhone users on certain other carriers running CDMA networks, and they're like, well, you wouldn't need to. Well, why would you be on the internet and on a call at the same time? And it's like, I'll tell you why. When I'm in business travel and I'm in a hotel room, I flop my phone down on the desk, I plug it into the wall with a charger, I turn on the tethering, and I wear a Bluetooth headset. I'm talking to my wife, doing email, updating blogs, website. Oh, it's awesome. It changes your life.
It does. It's no different than the argument of why would someone need access to their email while they're mobile? Why can't you just wait till you get home? It's the same argument, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, Granny Jones doesn't need to get her email that often, I suppose, but
it's in the same vein as the guy who decided that there was no requirement for any more than 6 computers in the whole of the British Empire. Why would we need any more than 6?
Or who would need more than 1 megabyte of RAM on a computer?
So forgive me for coming back to this. I was distracted by work, but LTE, huh? Like twice the battery draw of
no, I don't think it is actually. One of the great things about LTE is that it is more efficient. It's spectrally more efficient, so you're getting more bandwidth per whatever it is unit.
Is it the same transmit power though?
But the report that came out this week, which has to have been done on the Midwestern carrier, who's the only one running VoLTE right now, is that the one HTC handset they have running VoLTE on that carrier, its battery life, it's 40% less running voice over LTE than it is when it's on a 2G network.
Is this carrier voice on the LTE network?
It's Metro PCS is the carrier, and they're the only ones doing VoLTE right now in the U.S. And
so this is voice over layer 3 IP on the LTE data network.
Yes.
What that is? Okay.
Yes.
So
There's only the way the report lays it out. I'm sorry, I don't have a link to pass, but the way the report lays it out, there's only one carrier and one handset that could be doing it. So that must have been what they used. But the battery consumption in that particular case was quite high.
Do you happen to know whether that particular LTE radio was a system-on-chip LTE radio?
I do not.
I believe it was.
Because as I understand it, that's the reason that LTE is less efficient in most people's experience, and that's one of the reasons why the iPhone 5 should theoretically not have that problem, because they obviously waited to put the LTE on that device until they could do an SoC, because that is the right way to do it. And the reason they didn't do it on the iPad is because the iPad has a big enough battery that no one's going to care. It's going to be a fart in a windstorm, as it were.
Don't know. I am looking forward to, though, having a Nexus 4, which I've just ordered one for my wife, and then seeing what happens when T-Mobile rolls out their LTE in the coming year.
Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, aren't they going to do on AWS?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they've been moving all of their HSPA to 1900 megahertz. It's really funny. My brother-in-law uses an AT&T only type of handset, and he uses it on T-Mobile, and so he's been relegated to Edge, and just as he's been traveling around, increasingly he's getting 3G coverage because T-Mobile is moving all of their 3G coverage down into the 1900 megahertz spectrum.
Refarming their spectrum, yes.
Correct. I don't know whether they're just peering, or whether they're just essentially allowing AT&T to carry that on their infrastructure, or if they're changing out their base stations to be different. But
well, wasn't there two? I mean, there's two approaches to this. On the one hand, they want to sort of cherry pick some iPhone users off other carriers, and on the other hand, they're readying for their LTE rollout. So it's sort of a win-win.
Two-prong, yeah. Yeah, I can't imagine the iPhone user base would be large enough on T-Mobile to really to justify the cost of a change out like that. It just seems, I hear that over and over and over again. It just, as far as I'm concerned, that just seems impossible. It just seems like an impossibly low return on investment, even though it's sure, as long as you have to shift around your spectrum for LTE, which is not insignificant, then you may as well get that benefit. But I don't believe it could possibly be worth it in its own right.
So two things, Michael. You said that about Nexus 4 and LTE. I thought that I'd read somewhere that it was missing, even though it was using a chip that had some LTE support, that it was missing an amplifier or something to actually make that work with the Nexus 4.
Okay, I may not have the complete picture, but so far it looked like that might be possible, but it wasn't going to matter in the short term because there's nobody with the towers to run it on. Except Rogers in Canada.
Yeah, the other thing about reforming T-Mobile, I think part of their strategy might just be to kind of stop the hemorrhaging. I mean, they did have at one point like a lot of iPhone 3 users who were on their network, and they were like you said, we're going to try to attract some people, and they're just losing so many customers. I think now they're almost mimicking Sprint when they went through their giant customer loss, and I think they're just trying to stop the hemorrhaging somewhat by doing some reforming in certain markets.
They certainly didn't. They didn't seem to be able to recover from all of the bad press of the failed merger attempt or purchase attempt, and much as they keep on, the marketing effort has trundled along and is relatively decent, but they don't seem to be inspiring a lot of confidence. If James is still on the line, I owe you an apology, sir, and
You're apologising to thin air, Michael.
Okay. Well, if he's not on the line, then there was an implication yesterday that in a conversation yesterday that the playbook, RIM's playbook, was going to be upgradable to BB10.
Did you say BB10 or OS X?
BB10.
Okay.
Well, BlackBerry 10, right? OS X, in my world, is a Mac thing.
Yeah, I wondered what he meant when he said OS X.
Yeah. So BB10, which is not out yet, except for developer releases, is the developer handsets that are in circulation. The second generation of them hit recently. Has caused RIM's stock to jump. Apparently, people like it. Looks really beautiful hardware, nicely evolved OS, etc., etc. Well, today, DailySteals.com is offering the 32 gig playbook for $149, which, as Dave Michaels notes, my office is kind of like, Island of Misfit tablets kind of thing. As I bought a couple of past generations.
Put it there with your WebOS tablet.
With my G tablet and my WebOS tablet, yes, exactly. The WebOS tablets that still run WebOS that have not been upgraded to Jelly Bean yet. That's on my to-do list actually, but I haven't got there yet. So that's interesting. $149. That's a pretty sweet device for $149. And if it goes to BB10, then it's a platform for playing with, the new BlackBerry Messenger voice over-the-top capability and that kind of thing.
Gosh, I just have such a tough time imagining spending $149 on a playbook when you can spend, $199 on a Nexus 7?
I already have a Nexus 7, like the Nexus 7. Mm-hmm. It was another question for James. James has, every top-of-the-line cell phone known to humankind. And what do you actually carry with you when you go about, right? I mean, it's not what you own. It's not what you own. It's what you use.
James carries all of his cell phones with him. I would propose to you
on a Batman belt, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He's got a SIP necklace.
As he left the conference, he put about 6 phones in 2 pockets in his jacket.
Does he threaten to come back on? Because I'm about ready to turn this hangout off so that we can
go about our business here.
He made no threats.
Okay, we're gonna kill the Hangout simply because otherwise they get really long. But there are 7 people watching right now. Bob left. So I would like to tell you all to move over. If you're watching this live, move over to VUC.me to see how you can look at it. For how you can listen on audio, because we have got a dinner burning, and I can smell it from here. So I really have to go over and do something with that. So take care. VUC.me on the web, and that will be it for this YouTube broadcast. Wave goodbye, Andy. See you Thursday for You Should Taste This.